Joined today by Coach Aaron Smith, head coach at Panola College. And Coach, I'd love to know, you've been talking to some of your black players and looking for feedback, and I'm curious to know what percent roughly of your black players have experienced either nonviolent unconstitutional police harassment or non-lethal police brutality.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. First of all, Pete. So the number is 8 of 11 have been able to answer yes to that question.
So 8 of 11, because 11 times 9 is 99. So 9 times 8 is 72. So roughly 72% of your American-born black players have experienced either nonviolent unconstitutional police harassment or non-lethal police brutality. And I guess the answer is rather intuitive, but just to formally ask the question, do you consider 72% to be an isolated problem or a pervasive problem?
Definitely a pervasive problem, for sure.
And then, Coach, I'm also curious, you have such a unique background, and I'll share some with the viewers. Aaron Smith was not only a player, but a good player at an HBCU in Division I. And he's been in the junior college world for a while, which means not only does he have more interactions with American-born black kids than the average coach might, but he also has a lot of interactions with international players, which is unique. And on top of that, he's married to a black woman and has biracial children. So he's got a very unique perspective and a very unique background to discuss this topic. So, Coach, the floor is yours. I'm just very curious to know what else you have to say.
Yeah, I think really when it comes to the people trying to be voices, for our black friends and black family members, ultimately what we're arguing for is to, have empathy and compassion. You know what I mean? And that's my thing that I continue to struggle when I get into these, arguments or whatever you want to call them, is like, I'm really just asking for other people to have more empathy and more compassion. And me, I'm a seminary graduate, I'm a Christian, and it's like, and a lot of these conversations are with, fellow Christians, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that Jesus would desire all of us to be more empathetic and more compassionate. And that's ultimately, what we are arguing for. I think that, especially within the past 6 or 7 years, I've become more quote unquote experienced with this, as I have a 21-year-old that I call my son. He's my stepson, and he was is a black young man, and I have a black wife, as Pete said, and so I'm forced to put yourself in these positions as that most white Americans are not forced to be put into. And it's funny, I was listening to somebody the other day, not funny, excuse that word, but listening to somebody the other day that was asking the question, well, what do you see when you see George Floyd, face down on the pavement? And, and people gave the, quote unquote, right responses. Oh, I saw something, terrible. I saw these, things. And, the man that was doing the talking, was like, well, you see that? I see my son, and so we're really pushing people that don't understand this to like, no, that's what you have to do. You have to put yourself in that position in order to like have empathy and have compassion. And I just think that's kind of hard to argue with if you're, talking to somebody that does actually care, even if they may feel differently than you, at least they would care. And, what I would say, just as far as when it comes to police brutality, police are a necessary thing, like in a broken world, and we should be grateful for them. At the same time, we should always want them to be better at their jobs. And I use this as an example. As a coach, the biggest thing nowadays is all about culture, right? We have a strong culture. We have, this. And so, implementing your culture is so foundationally important as a coach and as a leader. And I just imagine, somebody coming to me as a coach or more so as a leader of young men, saying, well, I want to help improve your culture for the betterment of the people that you're called to serve. I don't think any coach in their right mind would say, no, my culture doesn't need to be better. And that's where I get sometimes angry when it comes to law enforcement, and God bless them, and I thank the Lord for them. But it's like, no, we need a culture shift. Like we need some reform here to help this. Even one of my young men that texted me back said that he was, let me look at my notes, more than 3 times in his 20s and 2 times when he was under 18. And that's a kid that's not 25 years old yet and is a college graduate. And so like these are this is not an isolated incident. And I just appreciate people like, you, Pete, that want to give voice to it and also, challenge, as you say, that Dr. King says, the white moderates. So, I'm trying to do my part as best I can to understand, the plight of my brothers and sisters. And that's really what I just hope that we all can do.
I really appreciate those words and those thoughts. And, you mentioned empathy, and there's a chapter in my book called Empathy. And after writing it and rewriting it and reading it and editing it, there was just something missing. So I decided to Google quotes on empathy to see if I could. And one of the first entries was a bunch of Bible verses. And I'm not really much of a Christian. I was raised in a Christian household. They were like, I do believe in a higher being. I sort of question there's too much overlap in what defines righteousness for me to think that God sent Jesus but didn't send Buddha. That's because there's just too much overlap in what defines righteousness between all the major religions. I don't mean to turn this into a theology interview. But I mention that because I actually hate it when people who aren't particularly Christians try to throw Bible verses at people I don't like that. And I wasn't looking to do that. But as I read these verses, I couldn't stop crying. Mm-hmm. So I included them in the book for that reason. If I start crying when I read them, apologies in advance. But Peter 3:8, finally, all of you have unity of mind, sympathy, brotherly love, a tender heart, and a humble mind. Ephesians 4:29, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. Ephesians 4:32, be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as God in Christ forgave you. Romans 12:15, weep with those who weep. Mm-hmm. 1 Corinthians 12:26. If one member suffers, all suffer together. Colossians 3:12. Put on them as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Galatians 6:2. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Hebrews 13:3. Remember those who are in prison as though in prison with them, and those who are mistreated, since you're also in the body. You get the idea. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, both the empathy and the religious doctrine that supports it. So that's about all I got on my end. I just really appreciate you being willing to share your thoughts, and we'll certainly stay in touch. And I know that you will not be one of those white coaches who puts out a mush-mouth statement and then moves on with your life, because you literally don't have the choice, even if you wanted to. And so I know that you'll be in this fight moving forward, and I really hope that that the white people who are speaking up, like we talked about before the interview formally started, it does give me a great deal of hope that I've seen over 100 police chiefs speak up, and that I've seen the president of the Southern Baptist Coalition, not the exact right term, but the president of the what's the body called?
Southern Baptist Convention. Yep.
Okay, that he's speaking up, and I'm seeing. I've had people who in the past would argue with me on this topic suddenly sharing my posts and retweeting. So I'm seeing a lot that's made me hopeful. I'm also seeing a lot that's made me angry and depressed. But the important thing is 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, are all of these white people who are speaking up and saying the right things, are they going to still be saying the right things and, more importantly, doing the right things?
Right.
And I know that you will be. And so I really appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Pete. Appreciate you.